prior to this deadline show.
I thought the other big one, and it's the Brewers have had a heck of a season, but they go and get Kyle Tucker from the Pirates and kind of beats the wave on people looking for some of these corner outfield bats at the deadline. That lineup, if you haven't looked at it, real lefty heavy, but really strong. And obviously the Brewers are playing great baseball right now. All right, so let's quickly go through some of the teams. We'll go down division by division, talk through kind of what the contenders are, what they could be looking for, and we'll go from there. So starting with the AL East, and I'll lead us off. So the Red Sox and Jays are pretty neck and neck there at the top, and they're both likely to kind of lead right around the top of the wild card right now. I think it might be the Red Sox a half game back. But they're both right there at the top of the wild card race as well. You also have the Yankees, who maybe you consider falling out of it, but only 5 back, and they have some definite places they could upgrade. So I consider them a maybe buyer as well. But for Boston, it's been weird. They kind of sold off the jump, and then they're kind of back into buying. It's the bullpen's been their biggest struggle. I know Harris was posting after he took over looking for a third base type. I don't know if Kendall Simmons is cutting it for them at third. So the Red Sox are definitely looking to make moves. Toronto has been really good. I think they've probably played been a little bad luck, as I think they've been clearly better than Boston so far. The offensive production's been a little lower than a Toronto team you'd use for. There's some guys on the fringe at the back of that lineup that you could probably replace. Matheson left there, Yolbert in the middle of the infield. But a really strong team, and I think Cam and them can really pick their spots. For the Yankees, if they were to try to go to it, the offense has not been pretty at all for them. They could really go a lot of places there to try to build around Glaber in the middle of that order. But not getting on base. Gallo, I know, has been a struggle for him in the Bronx. So good team. Don't know if they're going to make a push to fill out all these holes, but it could definitely be a fun one if they go for it. With that, let's transition on to the AL North. I think there's at least 2 and kind of a fringe third team there. But what are your thoughts on the AL North, Jason?
Yeah. I think the 2 teams at the top, Cleveland, Detroit, are kind of probably going to be in the playoffs again this year. Cleveland, just that perennial team that's always right there, and they have one of the best offenses in baseball. They made the big move for Bellinger last year. I think right now where they're probably looking is for some pitching in the rotation. I think that's probably where they need the most help. And there are definitely a few arms out there that could provide that boost for them. They don't really have, anyone you would consider a top of the rotation guy. And I think that's just kind of the one thing they're missing right now. Maybe add another arm. They're going with a 6-man rotation, which is kind of interesting. So maybe get an arm there, will allow them to go 5 and go with a more deeper bullpen. For Detroit, it's a pretty well-rounded team. I think they are another team that could probably use a bullpen arm. Maybe one more starter to round out that rotation. I know they're getting Casey Mize. Casey Mize on the DL is having a solid year, but I think they can use one more arm, maybe another bat somewhere. Probably look somewhere on the infield. Haven't gotten a lot from second, third, and short this year, and that's somewhere where I think they can definitely use an upgrade. And then for Pittsburgh, yeah, like you said, they're kind of a fringe team right now, barely kind of hovering over 500. A few games back as of the wild card part of the sim, 6 teams back. I will see if they actually do buy or if they become more of a seller. They got a solid lineup top to bottom. Their pitching, their rotation can definitely use an arm or 2. But we'll see where they decide to go. My gut feeling is they might be more of a seller at this deadline, looking towards next year. But if they don't want to go to it, they definitely need some pitching in there.
Yep, agreed with all that there. We can transition on to the AL South, and this will be a pretty quick one for everyone. The Rockies have absolutely opened this thing up. Maybe not surprisingly, I think the other 3 teams are a little bit of a rebuilding phase right now. 21.5 there at the trade deadline for the Rockies. So basically for them, it's just about getting yourself in order for the postseason. I think what Hayden's posted about it is probably their best bet, looking for some relief arms that can help bolster that bullpen, just have it ready for a playoff series. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a lineup that's set. The rotation has arms that are going to be good for the postseason. Mainly just staying the course and making sure he has the depth in case any injuries spring up here late. All right, and then we can wrap the AL. Let you talk about the San Francisco Giants and the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, I mean, I think your Giants are sitting atop that division. We're thinking in the American League, but yeah, they sit at the top of that division, up by a few games. They might have you guys might have the best pitching staff in baseball right now in the league. You could definitely use some bats. I know Zach mentioned it. You can use probably another outfielder. I think Drew Waters is one of the big names. This is definitely a location he can end up. You can definitely use an upgrade in left field. As for Minnesota, I think they're right there in the thick of the wild card race. They're 7.5 back in the division, but I think in the wild card they're a game out. They do have a pretty good offense. They third run scored. Their pitching has just been kind of anywhere from bad to awful at times. They just brought up Ezra Sheridan, of course, who's been really good for them so far. But they definitely need another starter there to sit with Sheridan at the top of that rotation if they want to get into that wild card race and eventually make it to the playoffs, along with maybe a bullpen arm or two. But I think their lineup's in good shape.
All right, let's head over to the NL side of the house. The AL seems a little more spread out, where there's some very obvious sellers and some very obvious buyers. A lot more teams hovering in that 1 to 4 games back in the wild card race. So this will be interesting. Jason, start us off with the NL East and at least the Phillies, Mets, and Nationals.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Phillies, I think that's a team that could definitely use a bat. They made the trade earlier for Carlos Correa, but he hasn't exactly been what they were hoping for. They do have Marcus Lee Sang has been an MVP candidate for them, but other than that, they haven't really gotten great production out of the lineup outside of a couple of other outfielders. So they can definitely be in the market for an infielder. There haven't exactly been a lot of those out there, put out there at least on the block. So we'll see if they're able to go that route. And then I think they can also probably use a bullpen arm or two, like pretty much everyone else, just to kind of boost that. But I think the lineup is where they have to be looking right now. For the Mets, it's another team that's they're 4 games out in the division. It's a relatively, I'd say, weak division. And this is kind of a team that on paper doesn't look great. I know they're in the second wild card spot right now, but they need to really upgrade that lineup. They brought up a guy in Gavin Cash who's been good for them so far, but it's only been 35 at bats. They definitely need another bat. Could probably use another bullpen arm like everyone else. Maybe a mid to back end starter. I think they can use help kind of everywhere if they want to stay in that wild card and division hunt. And then the third team is Washington, who has interestingly kind of put their big upcoming free agents on the block. So my guess is they'll be more of a seller at the deadline here as opposed to being buyers. They're 3 games under, but so I don't think they're going to be doing too much buying. Probably look to move like you said, Smith and guys like DeMarcus Evans.
All right,
Hey Tyler, I'm going to intervene real quick with our first trade. It's a relatively small one, maybe an effect of the sim from earlier today, but the Toronto Blue Jays have acquired relief pitcher Alec Jacob from the Los Angeles Dodgers in exchange for Moises Silva.
Yeah, well, Alec Jacob, I know well. He spent a lot of time. 2020 draft pick for me. A lot of time in the Giants system, and got taken from. I forget who he got taken from originally, but in the Rule 5, solid arm. Jacob is 3.25 ERA. It looks like on the year. So Blue Jays trying to add some arms that can eat up some innings for them for sure.
First right. Of what I expect to be many relief pitchers to go at this deadline.
Yep. I can a lot of fifth starting pitcher swingman types I can imagine will be sought after in this market. All right, we move on to the NL North. So really interesting one here as the division itself is pretty opened up. Brewers are up, around 15 games it was coming into the sim today. But other teams are still very much in the hunt for that wild card. So honestly, looking up and down the Brewers, I could not tell you much of a thing they need. It's a really complete all-around team. I'd leave it up to them to kind of where they want to pick and choose there. They're scoring a ton. They're pitching really well. It's a really complete baseball team. So maybe they get a great defensive catcher in there or something like that, but tough to argue with what moves have been made there so far. Below them, that's the Cardinals. Cardinals could really just use some offense, particularly out of the infield positions. They have some good bats in that outfield. But outside of, you kind of look at the second half of that lineup over there, and it's not a lot of totals. It's kind of been a revolving door in the second half of that order, and even with Boone at the top. So trying to stabilize that lineup, score some more runs, because the pitching has been really nice for them this year. So would like to capitalize on that. And then our two Chicago squads, just under 500, but hanging enough in it where they could make a go for it if they wanted to. The White Sox, just the back half of the pitching has struggled. The other part for them is they've just been atrocious defensively. So not sure if those are things that are going to get fixed at this deadline today, but it's a really fun offensive team. So I'd like to see, something being put together a little better on the pitching defensive side to go with that. The Cubs are a team that's a ton of fun too. They need some starting pitching just so bad. The offense is all kind of fun. They're hitting home runs like crazy. A lot of MVP candidates with Yordan, Brandon Davis just off that list too that I put together. So, if they wanted to, they could try to add a couple arms to this rotation and make a go for it. I wouldn't be entirely against the Cubs making a push for it here, because that's definitely an offense you can build around for sure. All right, we will go on to the NL South, where there's, again, a number of teams that could certainly be called contenders. Jason, the Braves, the Rays, the Marlins, all kind of in the hunt right now.
Yeah, I'll start off with the Braves here. It's a really good lineup. They hit a lot of home runs. They have three guys who hit a lot of home runs, but they score a lot of runs. They get on base. Where they really need help is with their pitching. Their bullpen has been one of the worst in the National League this year. Like we said, we expect a lot of relievers to move, a lot of pitching to move in general. And I think this could be a team that looks for a mid to back rotation starter along with one or two relief arms to really solidify themselves in that division moving forward. And then there's Tampa, who's 5 back right now, game and a half out of the wild card. They're another team that can use a starter. That their rotation really hasn't been that great this year. That's somewhere where they can definitely use an upgrade. And then they can also use maybe like a shortstop if one's available. They haven't gotten much offense from that position so far this year. Noah Smith's been solid, but I think that's somewhere where they might be able to use an upgrade. And then I'll move on to Miami, who are another game back of Tampa. But in the National League right now, it feels like just about everyone's in it, at least in the wild card race. But they're kind of the opposite of those last two teams, where their offense has just really struggled. They can use some pop. They can use bats kind of kind of everywhere. Maybe an upgraded second base, upgraded shortstop, something like that. And they can also probably use another starting pitching arm to go at the bottom of the rotation. But with the NL being so wide open, it is it's kind of, you can feel like every team could be a buyer right now.
Definitely so. Let's wrap up these with the NL West. A fun division here. The Diamondbacks are out to a pretty good lead in it. Around kind of that top tier of teams. A lot of teams with between 66 and 69 wins at the top, and then a bit of a drop off. But Diamondbacks have been good. The Padres just behind them, leading the wild card. And then the Angels are sitting right around 500 too, but they're another team based on what kind of they've been posting looks to be a team that's going to sell. But yeah, starting with the Diamondbacks at the top, obviously it's a really good team. The back end of the pen, Ladd and Didini at the back at the end have been super good. Struggled a little bit leading up to that, so it's another team I expect to be in the market for some of those middle relief types, some guys to eat some innings for them. The Padres, another team where the bullpen is probably the place they go for some upgrades. It's struggled mightily for them this year. It's kind of been a revolving door at closer and what leads up to that. So Padres could definitely be a team in search of a couple of arms back there. And then finally, the Angels, interesting if they're going to buy or not. I would guess they're going to sell, but it's kind of a last hurrah for a lot of these teams. There's holes on both sides of things, but you would think guys like Dustin May and Josh Van Meter, if they were going to get moved, could get some pretty nice returns in this market. So understand that decision as it looks like, it might be teams playing for one wild card with how San Diego's playing right now. All right,
Tyler. I'm going to intervene once more with a couple of rumors. Nothing concrete, but some stuff coming out of Cleveland. Nolan Jones' name has been something that's been popular out there, despite the Spiders' success in recent years and obviously this year. I'm being told that Nolan Jones is no longer on the block and an extension might be imminent. So look for that to possibly get done fairly soon, I would think. Cardinals are another team to watch leading up to this year's deadline. Jack Flaherty's name is out there. Nolan Gorman is another popular name out there as well, with Dylan Carlson. All names to watch. And while I got the mic, we'll break another trade here. The Boston Red Sox have acquired Logan Gilbert from the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for outfielder Mike Viramontes.
So yeah, Gilbert, a guy who I think is just going to miss our top 10 list that we'll get to here, but obviously an arm that has done it in the past. In Atlanta, he led the league in wins in 2026. So it's a nice deal for a guy who has this year and next year being affordable, and they can make their mind up after that. But Red Sox back in, and they get another arm they're looking for.
Yep, I agree with you. It's an interesting contract, as you said. Got the 2 cheap years and then 2 team options. Hasn't been necessarily great this year. He's giving up a bunch of home runs, but if you can keep that whip down and maybe the monster will keep some of those balls in the park that have flown out of GAB.
Mm-hmm. All right, so yeah, as we can see now on the right, we have our top 10 available players. We'll start at the bottom and work our way up as we get through these. And number 10 is Braylon Bishop, and he's a little different than everyone else up here. This is probably a guy where you could probably use him if you're a buyer, maybe not right away, but if you're kind of one of those fringe teams that's not sure about direction, he's definitely a guy to take a chance on. 24 years old. He's an elite defensive center fielder. You have control basically through his entire prime. He's a top 100 prospect too. So a lot of teams who just need good defense in center field could use him, whether you're in the hunt or not. But it'll be interesting what kind of prospects people are willing to part with a less than stellar bat, but someone that can definitely get it done with what you need from a center fielder. A couple teams that were interesting to me. One was Philadelphia. Another was the Mets. Wouldn't really help the Mets' offensive problems, but they've kind of gone with a small ball defensive style, and he'd be a good upgrade at center field for them. All right, let's take us on to number 9, a guy having a pretty massive breakout season, Jose Azocar for the A's.
Yeah, 31-year-old center fielder is probably better in right, but he's having, just as you said, just a massive year. Kind of like last year was a 753 OPS. Year before that, 669. All of a sudden, he's bumped that up to 894. So I think that you've got to question kind of whether or not that's sustainable at this rate. Whether or not you really want to buy high on a guy who's kind of having a career year at 31 years old. But like we said, there's a number of teams out there that can use bats. I think the San Francisco Giants are one. The Cardinals are another, and then possibly a team. Sorry, like the Mets or the Phillies, like the teams that can use some offensive additions are teams that could kind of look out for a guy like Azocar who could play center field, but like I said, is probably better in right, but definitely capable in center as well.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Tyler, I got a couple deals coming in for you, and Jason. Sorry, Tyler and Jason. The Atlanta Braves, Jason touched on them a little earlier. They've acquired relief pitcher Joe Jimenez from the Nashville Outlaws with 100% retainment in exchange for pitching prospect Gus Uribe.
Yeah, so Jimenez, obviously a big signing and essentially going to probably be a rental for the Braves this year with just the 1 year left on his deal. Big time stats. He has not been good at all in Nashville. He has struggled a ton. You see the ERA up over 6. Not great numbers there, but you look at the profile and it's a guy who's done it in the past and should be able to moving forward. So like you touched on with Atlanta, a pin that needs it and a good get, I think, there with Jimenez.
And the first of I feel like a lot of Nashville Outlaws who are going to be moving at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to keep the topic on the trades here. The Kansas City Royals have sent starting pitcher Sandy Alcantara to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for Nazir Mule and Manny Valdez.
Yeah, this is a great transition. Jason, I know he was number 7 on our top 10 list here upcoming. What are your thoughts on Alcantara and what the Cubs are getting there?
Yeah, Alcantara has been a guy who, he was really good, somehow was still putting up numbers while he was playing in Colorado. Has just continued that through his time in Kansas City now. Putting up another stellar season, 3.59 ERA, 1.2 WHIP. That Cubs team, as you hit on, is a team that desperately needed another arm. They got a lot of young ones, but I think if they're going to try and go for it now, he's a guy they can definitely use. And he's also, a guy, he has a player opt-out, so we'll see. And my gut feeling is that he's going to use that opt-out. But if he doesn't, you got a cheap starter for the next year and a half.
Love seeing the Cubbies go for it like that. That's starting that train early here. Any more, Zach? Are we back to the list?
Nothing right now. I'll keep you guys in the loop.
All right, appreciate it. 8 on the list, Matt Olson from Baltimore. So obviously just some very recent ownership. So it'll be interesting how quick they're able to assess and figure out their direction moving forward. But for my money, easily the biggest pure bat we have available in this kind of class. And I think it's probably the best time to move him with him having another year left, probably get the best value out of him this year. But massive power from the left side, a guy who, a bunch of teams could probably use in some sort of first base DH situation. But, teams we've touched on with Azocar and Bishop below, I think the best fits are kind of Philly, maybe the Mets as well. But Philly seems like just a perfect fit for him. That ballpark, he would succeed a ton, and it'd just be a big bat that they could really add there. We have touched on Alcantara at 7. At 6 is Garrett Mitchell, who is an interesting one. He's a left-handed outfielder, can kind of play all over the place out there. Really good defender. He has speed. The bat is starting to slow on him a little bit, in particular this year. The contract doesn't age particularly well either with how he's aging. 2 more years of control and then a team option on the back end. It's a perfect fit for the Giants, in desperate need of a left fielder. But there is also definitely some other teams where he could be a really good fourth outfield, maybe a platoon just to hit from the left side too. But definitely a good option there.
Tyler, I do have another deal trickling in here. The Colorado Rockies have reunited with first baseman Ryan McMahon. In exchange, the Montreal Expos will receive Greg Dykman, Jonah Prine, and Mike Stakowicz.
Yeah, so McMahon is another guy. He's having a pretty mediocre year, all things considered, a bit down from the numbers he was putting up while he was in Colorado. But obviously going back home can turn that around the second. Rockies adding to kind of the fringe of their lineup, trying to get it in order. So I think a good buy for them for essentially no cost.
Yeah, completely agree. And that's, I think that they're trying to make Bregman, more of a DH because McMahon, I think, is a little bit of a better defender. So we'll see what they do there.
Before you guys get into the list, the deals are starting to roll in here. The Nashville Outlaws have sent their second player elsewhere. The Giancarlo Stanton has been traded to the Toronto Blue Jays with 100% retainment in exchange for Jordan Ramirez and Brandon Barrera.
All right, nice. So yeah, I think the both of the expansion teams are expected to be active today, and probably for the best that they get some more actual just players in their systems more so than anything. But Stanton's been having a pretty nice year. I wasn't sure exactly what Nashville is going to get out of him this year, but the power still plays. The defense it doesn't particularly, so it's going to be basically a pure DH type, one would guess, for them. But from the right side, maybe it's just a bad throw against lefties. I think he's a good fit for a team that could use some offense.
Yeah, completely agreed. A pure DH, 3 true outcomes kind of guy.
All right, so on our list, we are up to number 5, and we have another Oriole, and one of the probably the most interesting name to me on the entire list in DL Hall. What are your thoughts on him, Jason?
Yeah, a guy who last year was right there in the amongst the Cy Young contenders. Had a great year. Has not been able to replicate that this year. Posting a 5.53 ERA, 1.45 WHIP. He's still only 28, but he is a free agent at the end of the year. So this is you're getting a rental, hoping maybe you get some of that magic from last year. But as we mentioned, there's a number of teams that could definitely use the starting pitching. We mentioned the Cubs before, maybe in the market for another one. A team like Atlanta, or a team like Minnesota to pair, maybe see if you can get something out of him, pair him with Ezra Sheridan in your rotation. But there's a number of places that can definitely use that extra starter, hoping you get some of that 2026 magic.
Yeah, that seems like such a wild deal to make. So that's an interesting one. He's got the fragile tag, but he's also got the pedigree. He's expiring. The stamina's not there. That's a tough one. He's pitching in a bad park. He's got things pulling him in different directions. So that'll be interesting to see. As we get a brief look into Eric Mansfield, what we're going to do moving forward.
I guess we might as well break it. Technical difficulties there, but the Miami Marlins have acquired Eric Mansfield from the LA Dodgers in exchange for Luis Campos and Manny Razzo.
Yeah, so the Marlins, as we naturally said, they would go out and get some offense, have gone out and acquired a pitcher here. I saw that, or at least had heard that Mansfield was being shopped by the Dodgers, and it's a big-time stuff arm. He's pitching in AAA. He hasn't even cracked the majors yet, so a little bit of a prospect swap here. It'll be interesting to see if he is able to contribute this season or not, but with those numbers in AAA, it looks like this is kind of just a deal for the future here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's an interesting profile. Gives up doesn't have great movement, so probably gonna give up a lot of home runs. Maybe pitching in that big ballpark in Miami will help him. But as you said, the stuff is there. Decent control, 3 good pitches. So you're hoping kind of for magic here with him, and hoping to get most out of all that stuff he's got.
Another deal before you get back into your list, and maybe a name that hasn't really been talked about on the market to this point. The Boston Red Sox have acquired second baseman Anthony Rendon and relief pitcher David Bednar from the Philadelphia Phillies in exchange for Wilman Candelario.
All right, interesting one here. I need to look at Candelario.
Interesting to see the Phillies as kind of sellers here, potentially with Rendon. As we said, they're right there in the thick of the NL East. Rendon's not having a great year, and maybe this is kind of a bit of a money dump for them. But I think Candelario is definitely an interesting name heading back. He's a guy I feel like he's bounced around a little bit. Second baseman, can play basically anywhere on the infield. Not a great bat, but has really hit well in AAA last year. The ratings haven't been great for him. He hasn't produced really previous years, so maybe you're kind of hoping for that defense to be like a backup utility guy for the Phillies here.
Yeah, I was getting a look at Candelario's profile. Switch hitter, can play about everywhere, so a good util type for sure. But I think the Red Sox make another buy and get a pretty sizable bat here that I think can still play in Rendon.
And Tyler, another deal just coming in. The San Diego Padres have acquired Sandy Gaston from the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for Giomar Diaz. Gaston has 20% retainment.
All right, so there's a pretty big one here. I only know because I've asked on Giomar Diaz maybe 60 times across both of the teams of the podcast we're listening to right now. But yeah, they get the Padres needed the pin help. Jason, you can probably touch on this one. And Gaston might have been the best relief arm on the market. There was a couple up there, but he's definitely one of them. Still young and control on him, but your thoughts on going out and getting him?
Yeah, he's a guy who's been used as both a starter and a reliever. Has been really kind of terrible as a starter, but great as a reliever. So he's probably going to be my new closer. Diaz is a guy who's pitched in the majors parts of the last 2 seasons. He was part of the deal that sent Mackenzie Gore to San Diego. But he's a good control, good movement, got decent stuff. My gut feeling is he does improve at the major league level. He's been a really good AAA pitcher so far. So, I didn't really want to let him go, but I felt like getting Gaston to be my closer of the next couple of years was more important.
Absolutely. All right. On to number 4 on our list. We have Bobby Miller of the Nashville Outlaws. So another interesting one here as he's 28. He was an all-star this year that the Outlaws picked up in the expansion draft. 3.69 ERA, playing in a real tough park. It'll be interesting to see what the value is on him, as he's got a ton of control left, essentially 4 years just to have under control. Been pitching really well for the Outlaws this year. Seems like a good fit for some of those teams that are both going for it and looking for some control as well. Detroit stands out, maybe Tampa as well. Miami's already gone out and gotten an arm, so I'm not sure about them. But one of those teams who maybe not all in this year, but looking to keep a competitive window open for sure.
Yeah, I've got another deal here. The Reds are kind of rolling right now. And they've also sent third baseman C.J. Abrams to the Philadelphia Phillies in exchange for Nick Chittum, T.J. Prediger, and John Klecker.
Yeah, so the Reds stay making moves, the Phillies stay making moves as well. Kind of out with Rendon, in with Abrams here. Abrams obviously a speedster, steals a ton of bases. Good defender at third. I really like this as a buy for the Phillies a ton. It's a guy who fits really nicely with kind of what they're trying to do. They get him for this year and next year. I would guess he probably opts out after next year. So not a lot of longevity in this, but a guy who fits well for them.
Yeah, and it's on the other side. It's a pretty good return for the Reds. T.J. Prediger was the third overall pick in our draft last year. Good ratings across the board. 18-year-old, he's pitching at low A ball this year. There's a 2.4 ERA there in 7 starts. Hasn't really struck out a lot of batters, just have walk issues, but still managed to keep down that ERA. And then Chittum and Klecker are also solid prospects. Chittum's currently ranked number 391. Pitching is a 25-year-old pitching pretty decently at AAA, and Klecker's as a catcher with good catching ability, a decent hitting profile. Right now is putting up a 759 OPS at low A balls, an 18-year-old as well. So they get a couple of really young guys who can grow in that organization, along with a kind of major league ready pitcher in Nick Chittum.
Yep. Gotta like that return for Cincinnati a good bit.
Another minor deal coming in here. It looks like the Chicago White Sox have acquired relief pitcher Geronimo Francois from the New York Mets in exchange for pitcher Joe Engelbrecht.
All right, so Geronimo Francois having a nice year for the Mets so far. Good reliever. He's 33, so not just kind of looking for a rental filler, but nice pitch mix, and the White Sox get some pitching that they could definitely use.
I recall Francois signed like a 4-year, like $64 million deal as an IFA a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken. There was a huge bidding war for him when he first entered the league.
I believe it was Oakland, wasn't it? Oakland?
Yep.
Yeah. 455 with Oakland. Looking at it right now.
He was a big-time international free agent.
Good for him. Still getting it done.
Yep.
All right, take us to number 3 on the list. We've touched on this name a couple of times, Jason, but Drew Waters in Texas.
Yeah. Waters obviously was the big name that went to Texas in the Cody Bellinger trade last year. Having another good year for Texas. Was on that pretty good contract. $10 million this year, and then is a little less than that next year. He's a guy who can play both corners. Probably not a center fielder. He can play there in a pinch, but I don't know if you'd want to do that with him. Hasn't hit as well since leaving Texas. Posting a 790 OPS, 2.2 WAR this year. I'm sorry. He had a big year last year after the trade to Texas. Hasn't really matched that this year. 790 OPS, still a very solid player at a relatively cheap price. And we've mentioned a lot of teams that can use that outfield help, an extra bat. So I got to imagine there's a lot of demand going on for him right now, especially at that cheap price.
All right.
I'm gonna
Jason. Oh, good.
I'm going to intervene here. We got another one coming in out of Atlanta. The Braves and division foe Miami Marlins have made a deal. Atlanta has acquired relief pitcher Colton Hawk, 100% retained, along with Austin Wells, in exchange for Jesus Parra, Daniel Robledo, and Danny Palacios.
Yeah, Hawk. I'm guessing he was one of the best relievers in baseball last year. Still been pretty good this year. So another good ad for the Braves pen, looking for it. And they get Wells, who is a solid catcher as well. not positive on the prospect return. I know Parra's a guy who I've looked at before, but Hawk, obviously the big get here to add to Jimenez, another ad for that Braves bullpen.
Yeah, Wells is also a guy who's been playing first base a little bit down in AAA, having a huge year there. Maybe getting lightning in a bottle here with him, for the rest of the year for the Braves.
All right, Jason, take us to number 2 on this list. Another pitcher for Nashville, and Joey Wentz.
Yeah, I think Joey Wentz was one of the bigger names that I had available in the expansion draft. He's having a really good year for Nashville this year, pitching to a 3.23 ERA, 1.28 WHIP. 29 years old, still on a really good contract. He's owed $6 million this year, goes up to 7.7 next year, and then there's a player option for 7.7 the year after that. But yeah, I gotta imagine a lot of teams that can use that extra rotation arm. Even if you don't have a lot of money available, he's definitely an option for a lot of teams. I gotta imagine Nashville's taking a lot of calls on him.
Yeah, lefty too, captain. That's a nice one to slot in if you need kind of a 3 through 5 arm in your rotation for sure.
I got another deal coming in, and I know this is a team that we talked about not really knowing which way they were going to go entering the deadline. I think it's pretty clear after this one. The New York Mets have sent Alex Verdugo, fully retained, to the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for outfielder Chad Johnson.
Yeah, so that's a fun buy. Verdugo is having a really good year for the Mets. Again, following up a really nice 2026 in a stadium that's frankly just really tough to hit in. So for the Rays, it's a nice ad for them, especially at 100% retained on a rental. A guy who's a middle of the order guy right away. Good defensively at both corner outfield spots. A nice buy by them for sure.
Yeah, and looking at the return, I think Verdugo was a guy who I think was on our list last year when we were doing this. Wasn't really on my radar this year as a guy to get moved, but the return, even for one guy in Chad Johnson, is a pretty good return. He's currently the number 89 prospect in baseball. Should be a pretty good left fielder, big time speed. Big time eye, looks like a prototypical, top of the order bat. Was a second round pick a couple years ago. Still probably a couple years away, just 20 years old, but a really good prospect to get in return for Verdugo.
Yeah, I think knowing if we knew the Mets were full sell, I think Verdugo's easy top 5 on this list again. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good get.
And I'm going to transition right into the next one, outfielder. Another outfielder being moved. This is one that I touched on in the article. The Colorado Rockies have exchanged outfielder David Gallegos to the Oakland Athletics in exchange for Carlos Aguilar.
Yeah, Aguilar is a really nice bat and a good get for them. Another good captain personality. A guy who the profile you'd think would fit well for the Rockies, who are just looking for some fringe bats, it seems, to kind of fill out that lineup. A little surprised the A's move on from him, but without knowing exactly the Gallegos return, I'm sure it's a pretty solid one coming back.
Yeah, it's an interesting move, Colorado getting these 2 bats. They've already got Cedric Mullins, Victor Robles, David Dahl, and just Diaz having a solid year for them in that outfield. Maybe they just don't believe in Diaz that much, and they think that they needed the additional pop from Aguilar. But he should fit well in Colorado in general. Put up some big numbers there for them.
All right, we'll go ahead and close out our top 10 so we can get fully to just breaking down all these deals as they come through. Number 1 guy on the list is Austin Cox, and I'm not even sure if Cameron even wants to trade him, but I just make him put him on the list every year. But this is the best arm, I think, and that could be available today. Maybe Dustin May if you talk about the Angels, but Cox is having an unbelievable season. 3.39 ERA for the Royals. Going to be under the arbitration jump will be a little significant next year, but still very controllable for the type of pitcher he is. He's 30, going to be 31 next year. Seems like a good time for the Royals to get a big time return for him. Really like everything about him, especially being a lefty too. So this will be an interesting one if he's just going to kind of ride out a Royals career, or if he's a guy that could fetch a big return for them. Really anyone. I think a real good fit for him is the Spiders, who are looking for some help on the backside of their rotation. Detroit, the Braves could use an arm like this. The Rays could too. So this would be an interesting arms race if people wanted to pay up for a guy. I think we get a pretty good return as a 30-year-old.
It's it'd be a solid number 2 for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I got a pair of deals here for you. Staying with the Colorado Rockies, they've sent starting pitcher Clark Schmidt to the St. Louis Cardinals in exchange for catcher Jose Chavira and pitcher Jerry Gonzalez.
Okay, interesting one here is Schmidt had kind of solidified himself as maybe the 4th or 5th starter for them. Nothing. He is 9-2 at the 374 on the year, so it looks like for pitching in Colorado, that's a pretty big giveaway. But maybe there's some help coming on the back end of that pitching staff. But interesting one to move on from for the Rockies.
Yeah, I agree. I'm thinking along your lines too. As it's hard to imagine them making this move without having someone else they're bringing in. And plus, it's interesting to see the Cardinals go out and get a pitcher. When I think kind of they've been saying it themselves that their offense hasn't been really that great, and they can certainly use a bat. So it's interesting to go out and get an arm. Granted, a guy like Schmidt, who has pitched pretty well in Colorado, will probably even up that going anywhere else.
Transitioning right into our next deal, the San Diego Padres, they've struck again. This time they've acquired reliever Alex Spees from the Milwaukee Brewers, 100% retained in exchange for Felix Arellano and Jordan Ruiz.
Yeah, so Padres obviously on the market for relievers. Spees is another one where maybe that he's expendable because the Brewers are just so well rounded back there and just have so many options, but he's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit in priority in their pen with a 423 this year, but striking out 16.7. He's about a career just over 15 guy, so insane stuff from him, and a fun ad for a Padres pen that needs it.
Yep, he'll still slide in probably right behind Gaston at the back end of my bullpen with Nick Mears, who I also got from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so that does it for our list. We are about 10 minutes away. It's been a lot of names. It's been interesting to see the directions for some of these teams. In particular, the Mets seem like they're calling it this year. That NL wild card, it hasn't really been a team that's in the hunt really stand up and make a big time move. But will be interesting to see if any more roll in that lean that way.
What are some names that you're surprised haven't moved yet?
My biggest is Olsen. I think it's if someone needed offense, that'd be the first person I reached out to. So at least on our list of top 10, I thought he was the guy who was going to get moved on this list the most assuredly. Those pitchers at the top all had control, so I'm not particularly shocked if none of them move, but maybe one of those corner, either Waters or Mitchell too, one of those guys I would expect to move here in the dying minutes.
All right, so we're 9 minutes away. I am, working the phones, trying to see what's out there, who's making moves. Being told there's still a lot of conversation, a lot of texting going back and forth. But I'll keep you guys updated.
Yeah, no, I wish I could have contributed something more to the agenda here. The Giants are lame as per usual, so we're gonna have to write it. But Jason, do you wanna touch on kind of what the new look Padres look like with those two ads?
Um, yeah, sure. I mean, I think we've hit on it that our biggest needs was in the bullpen. Um, so over the last couple weeks, starting with Nick Mears from the Pirates, and then getting Gaston and Spees, just these big kind of power arms. Spees, has had home run trouble in Milwaukee. Hopefully, coming to San Diego kind of fixes that. To go along with what I feel like is a pretty good rotation and a lineup that isn't spectacular, but has been really getting the job done for me this year.
I will say a team I'm intrigued that hasn't done anything is the Angels. They seemed very much like a pick a direction here, whether to go for it or start selling off pieces. So I'm really just shocked neither of the two has happened thus far for them, and they're just standing pat, as well as some of these other sellers we've mentioned not actually selling some of these pieces has been interesting as well. A lot of contender for contender type swaps here at the top.
Guys selling off who you might not think are sellers. Surprised me. I don't think we've heard from Montreal yet, unless I'm missing something. Haven't seen them move anyone. As far as I can remember, I could be wrong though.
I believe they had one early, but
the
I might be
Expos
mistaken.
the Expos did trade Ryan McMahon back to the
Oh,
Rockies.
that's right. Yep.
And a little rumor for you, I'm being told a Matt Olson deal is gaining steam. Haven't identified the team yet, but I'm told it is gaining steam. I do expect him to be moved at this year's deadline. And one coming in right now, the Atlanta Braves have acquired starting pitcher Grant Holmes from the Oakland Athletics in exchange for third baseman Ryan Ward.
Yeah, another arm for the Braves that they could use. Holmes is a guy whose value is probably tanking a little bit from what it was a couple years ago, as he's aging and not pitching quite as well. Probably a profile that probably fits better for a team like the Braves if he's not the fifth starter, but as a kind of a swing man or a middle reliever for them with that good pitch mix, but. A good cheap ad from a team that's definitely selling.
Yeah, and the A's. The A's are another team where they have those outfield bats. And Aguilar moved, but they also have Azakar, who I feel like is a strong candidate to move given his age and kind of the year he's having.
Hey, Holmes just shut out the Spiders over 7, so the guy can still get it done if he needs to. That's good to see on the recent game tab there for him.
Sticking with Atlanta, they're working the phones hardcore right now. They've sent second baseman Josh Brown and first baseman Danny Jimenez to the LA Dodgers in exchange for Connor Jones.
Yeah, more pitching to Atlanta. Jones, about to come back from injury, has been actually, advanced numbers have been really good for him this year. 4.22 ERA isn't crazy pretty, but kind of beat around by some bad luck there. Guy who keeps the ball on the ground, not having the best time out there for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are still trying to work through some past transgressions and get it trending in the right direction. So another good ad for the Braves here.
Could be a guy that just needs maybe some better defense behind him. Doesn't give up one home run in 42 innings. So maybe going to Atlanta where the defense might be a little better, it will help him out.
I'm told that Matt Olson, I teased it earlier, it was gaining steam. I'm told it is in the final stages of being completed now. It looks like he's staying in the Northeast. He's actually going across the border to Toronto with 30% retainment in exchange for Jorge Vasquez.
Oh wow! This is a big time swap here. Vasquez is a nice bat as well coming back. Vasquez more of a pure DH, and Olsen, a great defender at first. Vasquez had been not great yet. He's only 23 for the Blue Jays, so the Blue Jays are going for it. Olsen's a pretty immediate upgrade in the current state. So one I like a lot for both of these teams a good bit. Baltimore rebuilding, good offensive piece to put in Camden and build around there, but the Jays definitely get the short-term upgrade with Olsen.
Definitely a trade that makes a lot of sense. Baltimore, like you said, there's a lot of upside to Vasquez, so if he can hit that potential to get him, to move that Olsen money as well, definitely helps.
Maybe a little bit of a shock here, but the LA Dodgers have traded starting pitcher Luis Castillo along with starting pitcher Sam Russ to the Boston Red Sox in exchange for Alex Rios and Mario Arce.
Okay, so yeah, the Red Sox are, I love it. The Red Sox are going for it. So they've been one of the most active teams today in acquiring pieces. A real down year for Castillo this year. Team option next year, so if he didn't turn it around, they can get out of this quickly. But Red Sox taking on another piece and a guy who's definitely done it in the past and maybe will fare from a little better team morale in Boston.
Well, the return was Rios and Arce.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's definitely buying a bit low on Castillo, who's expensive and having a down year. And Rios is a first base only guy, decent bat projection. I remember looking at Arce before. I think he's a pretty solid bat in Boston. I know I've spoken to them about him before. I'm sorry, I was not finding him right now, but interesting trade to take on that money for a guy who looks like he might be on the downside of his career. But Boston's clearly going for it right now.
Here's the deal. I'm working to confirm this. It looks two teams that we haven't mentioned yet today are linking up. Yeah, the Minnesota Twins have struck a deal with the Seattle Mariners. Ki-Hon Bang coming to Minnesota in exchange for Brusdar Graterol, Ben Soder, and David Carcamo.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I think Bang is another name who just misses our list. It's because it's a weird contract where he has a player opt out after this year, and this has really been the first year he's kind of pitched to being worth that contract. So it might be seen as just a pure 1 year rental for Bang. Ratings are really good. He's got an ERA right around 4 this year so far in Seattle. So Twins need some starting pitching, and they definitely got a good one here.
Yep. They moved Graterol, who they've been feel like they've been shopping kind of forever at this point. Who's having himself having a really down year. Moving that money kind of I guess takes the sting out of the money you're bringing in from Bong, but. Yeah, I mean it's an interesting trade. That just trading money for money, and the Twins are obviously helping Bank and can continue to be what he's been this year for Seattle.
Yeah, I like it. They gotta solidify that wild card spot in Minnesota as best they can, and another arm is definitely the way to go about it. So I like that move for the Twins a good bit. So
we have hit that 8:00 deadline. I'm sure there will be last minute deals that trickle in here. So far, though, what are your general thoughts on the deadline?
Yeah, I think my favorite thing, and it hasn't been particularly busy from the Blue Jays like we've seen in some of the years past, but obviously Olsen's a big ad. But that race between them and Boston going out and getting a number of guys at this deadline is going to be super fun. Two teams that bought among the hardest of anyone today, so gonna really enjoy watching that race. It strikes me as they're gonna probably and whichever team loses out, going to be in a fight with the Twins, who just made a move. I would have called the Twins the odd man out there before that bang move, but that gets them back into it. So that AL wildcard picture is going to be all kinds of fun and how that shapes out.
And the Cubs bringing in some pitching as well. Were they the ones to trade for Alcantara? I can't remember at this point. Where did Alcantara go? To the Cubs, right?
Alcantara went to the Cubs. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. I think that's one of my favorite moves so far of this deadline. I think
Jason, hold on one second. You might want to hold that thought. Speaking of the Chicago Cubs, they have just acquired Joey Wentz from the Nashville Outlaws in exchange for Josh Suggs, Melvin Miranda, and Wilfred Candelaro.
Yeah, I mean, like we're saying, they're bringing the pitching that we've been saying they needed all show. So, I mean, I think that's a team that kind of, among all the teams, probably took their biggest weakness and really turned it around at this deadline with Alcantara and Wentz now.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs seem like the fun team to watch here all of a sudden in the second half, sitting out of that wild card, but going for it, which I love to see. Them and maybe the Rays are the only team kind of hovering outside of that spot that went for it. The Padres obviously make the buys, but for that second wild card spot, the Cubs and Rays is an interesting dynamic back there, but absolutely love the Cubs ads at this deadline.
Yeah, if they can get some of that young pitching just to pitch up to their potential, all of a sudden you have the makings of a pretty good rotation there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm told that there are still deals that are being finalized right now. Maybe some paperwork issues. We will work to get to them as quickly as possible. Any other thoughts on the deadline to this point, though?
No, we gotta upgrade from fax machines into FTD one of these days to get these rolling in. No, I mean, it'll be interesting. I think, I'm obviously a little disappointed to stand pat. I think I had some clear places to upgrade. Another team, Detroit, didn't see a lot from them at this deadline, and they're kind of in an interesting spot in the AL as well. So those are two teams who probably slipped a little bit at the deadline on the AL side. National League side, I think it was so jam-packed. The teams that made up their mind, at least one direction or the other, are probably the winners of that group. So even the Mets who are in it, making a decision to start selling, I'm good with. And then the teams that bought too, probably those teams that kind of just stood pat around that range. White Sox, Angels, that kind of area of teams, probably kind of losers on that side of things for me.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of teams that in the last couple of days have been putting some pretty big names on their blocks, like Washington and Texas, that we haven't really heard from yet.
Yep.
Yeah, Atlanta's not done yet, and they're submitting the paperwork now. I'm told two more deals, a pair of deals here. We'll get to the first one first. They've acquired second baseman Baker Pastron from the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for Hector Castrillon, Augie Milbauer, and Takoa Yoder.
Yeah, well, without knowing the prospects, this is a wild one to me. I am shocked Pastron is moving. Without knowing exactly how the Brewers line up and how he positions himself, but I guess this is to free up time for Peguero in the starting lineup there, but you're filling a pretty nice hole for a league rival at middle infield where the Braves could have used an upgrade there. So that's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their plan is to replace Pastrana. If it's just to go with Peguero, this seems like, if not a lateral move, then just a backwards one, because Pastrana has been great for them this year. Giving you production at second base that you don't get from a lot of second basemen. Not to mention he might even be a better defensive player than Peguero. So I guess the Braves came to him with an offer that he just couldn't say no to. But it's interesting to see a team like Milwaukee trade off one of their. They have a lot of really good hitters, but to trade off one of their best ones at a position that you don't get it from is surprising.
Mm-hmm.
I teased a second deal, and this one another fairly big one. The Atlanta Braves have sent outfielder Christian Pache along with third baseman Austin Riley and utility man Maximo Acosta to the St. Louis Cardinals in exchange for Dylan Carlson.
Holy moly! Okay,
Yeah,
thanks for winding us up for these at the tail end. Yeah, so this is this is a lot both ways, obviously. I mean, Pache's probably the best defensive center fielder we have, if not just one of the best. He's trended a little bit down with the bat in the past couple of years, and maybe that's what makes him, slightly available. But you get back from St. Louis, Dylan Carlson, who's just a gigantic bat. He's having a little bit. Well, no, he's having a pretty good year, but not like his 2025. But a pretty like for like swap. If you need the defense and center, maybe you go with Pache, but Carlson's a big bat and a good ad for the Braves there too.
Yeah, I mean, Carlson is a pretty big contract right now. $23 million through year 2030, basically. A guy who's, like you said, saw kind of a big decline from 2025 to 2026, and has been a little better this year, but hasn't been up to that level that you kind of expect from him. To get in return, two guys, Pache, like you said, great defensive center fielder is worth its weight in gold to a certain extent. They just don't come around a lot. He's on a pretty nice contract himself that escalates a bit as we go through the next couple of years. And Austin Riley's just having a really down year. I mean, for a guy who, was a pretty solid power bat for the Braves last year, has just really struggled this year. So it could be a money thing for the Cardinals, but it's a very interesting trade both ways.
Seems like a big change of scenery trade. A bunch of guys who are starting to get kind of wear out their welcome in their respective places and getting flopped around. Hopefully they can spark it back up while they're still in their primes there.
I do have two more deals lingering. The Seattle Mariners have sent third baseman Alfredo Diaz to the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for pitchers Lester Medrano and Will Coquillard. Good luck with that one, Tyler.
I'm going to go with Coquillard. As my guess. But yeah, so this is a seller for seller type swap here. I'm not sure if any of these guys are Medrano's in the majors. Yeah, Medrano's just been up this year, not been very good, but good in AAA. Yeah, so just kind of some flipping of some prospects around. The Mariners need some pitching prospects, it appears. The Reds get one in Diaz, who's super young. I think I just saw he was 17. So yeah, just a nice little swap between two teams trying to get their systems in order.
I mean, Diaz is a top 40 prospect right now, so to see him move from a seller to a seller is an interesting move.
And then one final deal: the St. Louis Cardinals once more they've acquired. Well, let me make sure I have this right. They've acquired, so this is backwards on the screen. They've acquired starting pitcher Omar Sanchez and Renny Hidalgo in exchange for Aaron Bracco from the Miami Marlins.
Yeah, Bracco's had I hadn't looked at him in a while, an interesting career swing. He was a guy who I loved as a prospect. He was killing people kind of in the early 2020s there as he's about to come up, and looks like he's just kind of flamed out in his chances at the majors. So maybe a change of scenery. The Marlins get a bat. I think he can play in the majors for the Marlins right away. Pretty solid defender in the middle infield as well. He did that injury is from the sim today, so that's pretty recently updated. But yeah, so they'll swap there, and I think Brock's a guy who goes in and plays for them right away.
He's a guy I've looked at a number of times as I've been talking trade with the Cardinals over the past couple of years as well. So interesting to see him move, even if it's kind of at a buy low point.
So So I have confirmed that is all of the deals for this year's deadline. Um, I'd have to go back and count them, but I do think we were close to 30, if not over it.
Yeah, no, that was a fun one. I think in years past it stayed a little closer to our top list. I think we just kind of limited the list to the clear sellers this year, and we saw a lot more deals being made amongst contenders, especially the biggest names there. Guys like Carlson, Pastron, Pache, those kind of guys getting flopped around there. But some fun buys. I think still my favorite deal is probably that Baltimore-Toronto swap. I think I like what they both got out of that. I think it's perfect for both of them. Good to see a new GM come in and turn that Olsen deal around quickly. And also, Cam stays on it and is going to try to compete. So all kinds of excited for that Toronto-Boston race there.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's definitely a couple of names I'm surprised didn't move. I thought maybe Drew Waters would go, given that contract and his production. Like you said, I think only 3 of our top 10 guys actually went anywhere. Mm-hmm. Unlike last year, I think kind of a lot more of the list moved. But yeah, I mean, I think like you said, watching that Olsen for Vasquez trade is pure just now for future. Seeing the Cubs, as I said, go get those pitchers to try and round out their rotation. In a national league where basically, everyone is within 3 to 4 games of a wild card of a playoff spot, except for 3 teams. So, to see them taking the opportunity when maybe other teams around them kind of didn't really make those moves.
Yep, agreed.
I thought both the AL East teams, the Jays and the Red Sox, both did a tremendous job with this year's deadline. The Cubs, I thought, were big winners. I'm going to put the Tigers as the loser of this year's deadline. Sellers in general, I thought did a pretty good part. Yeah, good job for the most part.
The seller, I thought, did a really nice job. Were the Reds today? I think a number of really nice deals the Reds made. We've seen them kind of waver back and forth between buying and selling over the years, but I think they made a number of really nice moves with some of their guys they could have shopped today. So definitely good on them. I think good on Nashville too, getting some good returns for their guys while they try to rebuild. But I think all the sellers did a pretty good job all around.
Yeah, and then you have Milwaukee kind of making seller moves as they have maybe one of the best rosters in the league right now. That move, and then Colorado moving Clark Schmidt, which may have been just to free up some money, but it's interesting to see a team in the hunt, trade one of their top starters for and not really replace him.
An NL playoff series where we see the Braves and Brewers and Pastron on the Braves is going to be that'll be an interesting one for sure.
Who's the one name that you thought had to move that didn't get moved that should have been moved?
Jason, you want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. I definitely, one of the guys I thought would definitely move was Drew Waters. I thought, with the contract he has, it's so cheap right now. To trade that contract for a year and a half control, I thought that would be one where they could do, where Texas could do pretty well in a return. So for him to stay put was a little surprising to me.
Yeah, I think Waters and Mitchell in the same vein. I think Mitchell kind of for the opposite reason. I don't think his contract is getting any better how it ages. So it probably be, I think, and with Waters turned into essentially a rental if they want to move him next year. I think this was the time for both of those guys to move and maybe some missed opportunities there.
I'd also really like to see what any conversations around Jose Azocar look like. Given kind of his situation of having his career at 31, to see if it was just the pricing, the asking price not being matched.
Yeah, it's a tough number to find there. Yeah,
I am being told Oakland they were fairly active this year at the deadline. I haven't received any intel whether Azocar was discussed with anybody. Waters, I can confirm, had multiple offers on the table. Apparently, not enough to get a deal done. DL Hall is another name that I'm shocked didn't get moved. I thought given the state of the pitching around the league and the availability of it, that somebody would be all over that type of rental. It's going to be interesting to see what Baltimore tries to do with them moving forward, whether they try to extend them and get back into contention. I think it's fairly easy to forget that they did win the division last year.
Yep.
What they're going to do with DL Hall moving forward? Are they going to take the comp pick? I don't know what kind of contract he's looking for. But yeah, all in all, I thought it was a fun deadline.
Yep, agreed. Always a good time.
Yeah, so I don't have anything else. No other inside info coming in. Tyler, Jason, anything you guys want to add?
No, just Giants couldn't get a thing done, so obviously I appreciate you not calling me a loser at the deadline since I'm on here and Nick gets it because he couldn't join. But yeah, no, it's good to be back on the buyers, even though I didn't do anything. Back to being back on the buyers side of things after a bad last year, so at least happy about that.
Yeah, and I feel like the Twins obviously make their moves, but I think you've kind of build yourself up a big enough lead that you're I don't know if you're safe, and there's not that much not as much competition in the AL as there is in the NL right now.
Yeah, I mean it already looks like there's only going to be one team really on the outside looking in, unless the Pirates got real hot here all of a sudden. One team on the outside looking in of that playoff picture already. So pray to God it's not the Giants, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Appreciate it, Zach.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be a wrap for us for the 2027 deadline. Let's go root for a tie in the NFL. How about that? Close the night out.
Kneel it out.
Kneel it out. All right, Jason.
All right.
For Tyler, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll be back in a couple of months with the 2028 deadline.
See you guys.